Hi everyone, I wanted to talk to you about the difference between revising and editing. I wanted to share with you some quotes from some famous authors about the revision and writing processes. Elmore Leonard says, "If it sounds like writing, I rewrite it." Vladimir Nabokov says, "I have rewritten, often several times, every word I have ever published. My pencils outlast their erasers." Updike says writing and rewriting are a constant search for what it is one is saying. And Colette gives us the advice to put down everything that comes into your head and then you're a writer. But an author is one who can judge his own stuff's worth without pity and destroy most of it. And that's a really important point to think about, because what happens so many times when we write, because writing is challenging, we want to just keep it exactly the way that we wrote it, and we're not as open as we ought to be to revising it and to improving it. And that's something that you really need to work on, and that I'm hoping that you'll be able to demonstrate with this next assignment. So what is revising? Revision literally means to see again, to look at something from a fresh, critical perspective. It is an ongoing process of rethinking the paper, reconsidering your arguments, reviewing your evidence, refining your purpose, reorganizing your presentation, and removing the lifeless prose. So it's really you're looking at the big picture. I don't know if you've ever heard of hawks or locks. Hawks are higher order concerns, and so revising takes in the higher order concerns. Is it making sense? Do you have enough description? Are you making a clear argument? Do you have a clear purpose so that your readers can really understand what it is that you're talking about? So why is revision a necessary component of good writing? Writing is part of finding and developing meaning, and you don't always do this in your first attempt. Revision is an opportunity for you to look critically at what you have written to see if what you have written is worth saying, what you meant to say, and understandable for the intended audience. One of the things that I frequently say about writing and revision is, frequently I don't know exactly where I'm going till I get to the end of the essay, and then often at the end of the essay I find the perfect thesis statement or the perfect introductory paragraph. So frequently I end up getting rid of my conclusion and moving that up to my introduction. But I don't know that. I mean, I have an introduction of sorts, but I don't really finalize it until I've finished the paper. So when do you revise? This is really important. It's best to give yourself some time. I say at least an hour, but preferably a whole day is better. Now, you guys have had a lot of time between when you wrote your essays and when you're revising them, so you won't have to worry about this. But you need some time to separate yourself from the essay. So give yourself some time away from your work before you begin to work on your revisions. And that gives you the opportunity to come to the piece of writing with fresh eyes and a fresh perspective. So begin with the big ideas, the higher order concerns. Reread the assignment. Make sure that what you have written meets the criteria for the assignment. Have you answered all the questions? Have you responded? Do you have all of the elements that the writing prompt has asked you to include? Then look at the focus of the essay. Is it appropriate for the assignment? Does it work? Is your topic maybe too big? Is it too narrow? Do you stay on track throughout the entire paper? So you see, these questions that I'm asking you to look at are big ideas. They're looking at the whole paper. They're not just looking at individual pieces of the paper, but taking the whole thing under consideration. So then let's start with your thesis. Do you still agree with it? Does it need to be modified because you've learned new information? Does it make a sophisticated or provocative point? Or does it say what anyone could say if writing about the same topic? This is really important because this is what makes your writing, steps it up, makes it a higher level. a better piece of writing is that you try to say something different. Remember Paul Roberts' advice to take the less obvious path, and that's really what is going to give you that sophisticated or provocative point of view. Is your thesis general rather than specific? Could it be changed completely? Have you come to different conclusions, or is there a different way that you want to say what you're going to do in your particular essay? Think about your purpose. Does your introduction provide a roadmap for your readers to follow? Your introduction needs to do a lot of work. It needs to provide the background on the topic that people need to know in order to make sense of what you're saying. It needs to give a clear purpose. Why are you writing this? What do you hope for people to get out of it? And you also need to have a hook. What are you going to do or say that's going to invite the reader in and get the reader to really be engaged with what it is you're telling him or her? Next, look at the balance in your paper. Do you spend too much time on one point and not enough time on another? Do you give appropriate amount of details throughout the essay? Are the tone and formality of your language appropriate? Are they consistent throughout? Are sometimes you're a little casual and then other times you're formal? You really want to be consistent throughout the entire essay. So look at your tone, look at the formality of your language, and make sure that you're staying in the same format throughout. Look at your thesis again. Does your paper follow the roadmap you developed in your introduction? Do you take unnecessary twists and turns, or do you follow a logical progression? This is really important because sometimes we get caught up on a particular point or a particular issue and we lose our main idea. So again, step back and make sure that your paper, that you have written what it is you say you're going to write, that you have talked about the elements that you say you're going to talk about in your essay. Review your organization. Does the essay follow a logical order from one point to the next? Do your transitions move the reader along to the next idea? Do the topic sentences in your paragraphs adequately explain the main idea of each paragraph? Remember that topic sentences and paragraphs are similar to thesis statements in essays. Every paragraph requires a topic sentence, and that topic sentence should be the main idea of the paragraph. What is the paragraph doing? What kind of information is it going to provide? What is it going to get the reader to think, feel, or believe? So topic sentences in your paragraphs are key. Look closely at the information you have provided. This is the research aspect. Or if you're not writing a researched essay, this could be your description and your details. Are all your facts accurate? Could any of your statements be misinterpreted? Have you provided enough detail? Have you correctly cited all of your information? You really want to make sure that you've cited what needs to be cited and that you've provided enough detail. Whether you're writing a research paper or not, you really want those descriptions and those details that help your reader feel a part of what it is you're saying, that allows them to connect to the point you're trying to make. Look at your conclusion. Does it tie the paper together in some kind of meaningful way, or is it redundant? Is it just the restatement of your introduction? If that's the case, then you really need to work on tying things up in a nice, neat little bow for your reader. If you're writing some kind of research paper, you might conclude with a call to action. If you're writing a narrative essay, you might conclude with a question or some kind of a way to get your readers to continue thinking about what it is you've written about. So end the essay on a thought-provoking note. Make sure you don't just stop. And I've had several essays this semester where we've just stopped. You don't want to just stop. You want to make sure that you feel that your reader feels satisfied when he or she comes to the end of the essay. This is the thing about revision that people don't understand, and that is revising is the hardest part of writing, and it takes the most amount of time. Because it asks you to closely examine what you have written and to consider your options. And we don't like to do that. We've already put down what we meant to say, and so then I've said it, that should be the end of it. But that really isn't the case. You need to sit down and think, well, could I say it this way? Would it be more effective if I provided more description in paragraph 2 and less in paragraph 3? Would my reader still be able to follow along what it is I'm trying to say? So it takes time and it takes thinking, and those are really the hard parts of revision. Common misconceptions about revision. These are some things that I've heard from students or people have said about revising. It makes things worse. It was fine the first time. I wrote it perfectly. I don't need to fix it. It means changing just a few words around and proofreading the essay. That is not what revision is. That's editing, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Some people think that revision should only take a few minutes, and really, if you're revising a document well, it should take at least an hour because you're rethinking every element of your essay, and you're looking at each piece both separately and together to make sure that you have a nice flow, that your reader's going to end up where you want the reader to end up. So next is editing. Editing is the next to last thing that you do, and it's really done in conjunction with proofreading. So editing and proofreading attend to the detail. These are the lower order concerns. This is the nitty-gritty, the little bits and pieces. And it's better done after you've decided that you're happy with what you've said. So you've said everything, you've got everything in the order that you want it to, you have enough details, you've got enough supporting evidence, your research is good, and so now you're going to edit. It's done after you've done everything else. But frequently, this step is skimped on because you run out of time. So one of the most important things about revising and editing is to give yourself enough time to complete the process and to complete it well. Editing is important because it's an integral part of demonstrating your standards, and no matter how painful it is, you must take care to get the details right. You can write the best, most interesting, most fascinating essay, and if it's full of typos and grammar issues, your readers are not going to take what you've said seriously because they're going to feel like, well, you didn't care about what you wrote, so why should I care about what you've written? So editing is your chance to project your ethos, to project to your reader that you know what you're talking about, that you've paid attention to the nitty-gritty details as well as the big details, and you've got something worthwhile to tell them, and that you've done your homework and you've worked hard to make sure that the information you're giving them is good. So what is editing then? It occurs at the sentence level. This is when you look at one sentence at a time in your essay, and I'll give you some ideas for how to do that. It is one-sided. Usually the editor writes comments and corrections on the paper and returns the paper to the writer, and then the writer makes those changes. It is hierarchical. An editor looks for mistakes and fixes them. An editor places value on writing, such as a grade. An editor focuses on the paper as a product, as an end product. What are people going to see when they read this? How is this going to look? This is the time to think about, are you following MLA format? Have you correctly cited information? Do you use in-text citations correctly? Is your works cited page in alphabetical order? Have you followed MLA format throughout? Are your publication titles in italics? Are your article titles in quotation marks? This is when you're paying attention to those nitty-gritty details of the works cited page. Do you have your periods in the right order? Should you have a comma where you have a period? That's what editing is about. It's the nitty-gritty details. Only the structure is corrected. This includes minor changes in spelling, grammar, punctuation, and sentence structure. So you're only taking it piece by piece and looking at it very closely but you're not changing paragraphs or moving things around. You're just looking at the individual sentences and making sure that every word is there for a purpose and that every word is presented in a way that's going to be meaningful to the writer. Tips for editing. This is huge. Don't read large sections in one go. You will miss a lot. Start sentence by sentence. Read the text aloud as your ear finds clumsy rhythms, repetitions, awkward and complex sentences, missing links, and the like that your eyes miss. Your eyes know what it is, what's supposed to be there. So they already know. Your eyes got it. Your mind's got it. So you've got to slow it down and look at each word, and reading aloud helps you to do that. Remember that even though spell check is very useful, you cannot rely on it alone. This is why editing and proofreading are so important. A word which is spelled right may not be the right word. For example, one of the typos that I always make is whenever I mean form, I type from. And I don't know why I do it. My fingers just naturally do it, and it's a real pain in the patootie. So I know if I've got the word from or form in something I've written, I've got to go back and make sure that I'm using it correctly, because my spelling checker is spelled correctly, but is it used in the correct context? And that's one of the things that you do when you're editing. Many people find that they do a better job editing on the paper than a computer screen. When you're looking at the paper, you can start looking at one sentence at a time. It's much easier, and it's much easier if you're making those corrections on the paper, because your brain skips ahead to the next sentence. So if you're focusing sentence by sentence and going very slowly, it's going to be easier to find those errors. I just mentioned this, but again, it's worth repeating. References need particular care. Keep a printed copy of your reference list, and while you're reading the text, make sure that each reference appearing in the text is also entered into the list of references. It is surprising how many citations are missing or have inconsistent or wrong details recorded. I just graded a set of papers, and I found this throughout. People are quoting in their essays, but they don't have any in-text citation, no reference, and you have to have your references in there. So again, just double check. Now these are two tools that I've found, and I really am strongly encouraging you to use them. The first one is Grammarly.com. If you go to Grammarly.com, it asks you to, it's free, but it asks you to set up a username and a password. I suggest that you do that and use your Blackboard login for your username, and your password the same password that you use for Blackboard. And set up Grammarly, and then you can upload your essays into that, and it shows you your grammar errors, which is good. Word does that. But what it does is it provides suggestions and explains to you why it was wrong. So that's really important when you're editing, because grammar checkers are automated and they don't always get the context or understand what it is you're trying to say. So having that explanation there kind of gives you, okay, the grammar checker is thinking this, but this is what I really meant, so it's okay, I can leave it. Or maybe I need to change this word, this really isn't the word that I intended to use. So that's why Grammarly is so useful, and again, it's free. The next link, which is super important, is the text-to-speech feature in Word. And this video walks you through the steps. It's super easy. It takes like 3 seconds to enable your computer to read to you your essay. So what happens then is that your computer, in a very funny computer voice, will read your essay aloud to you. And when your computer's doing that, take your paper copy of your essay and read along with it to make sure that everything flows and sounds right. And those places that you get tripped up, highlight them or note them, put a little check mark there so that you can come back to them and look at them to make sure that they're doing what you need them to do. So That's my little lecture on revising and editing, and I hope you'll take your time and do an excellent job the next time you revise and edit your essays.